Let's just jump straight into a clinical scenario that, well, you've probably seen this exact patient this morning. You're in clinic, you have a patient, let's say late 60s, early 70s,
Right.
and their knee is just absolutely destroyed. We are talking bone-on-bone osteoarthritis, massive osteophytes, the works. They are in pure agony. Their world is shrinking because they simply can't move, and they are desperate for a replacement.
Oh, it's the bread and butter case. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
kind of patient who walks in or, limps in every single day in an ortho practice.
Exactly. But then you pull up the chart, and the BMI is 42, or maybe 45. And suddenly, that really straightforward path isn't so clear. You're staring at this massive conflict.
Yeah, the classic catch-22.
Right, because on one shoulder, you have your surgeon's instinct. You want to optimize the patient, get the weight down, reduce the infection risk, make the biomechanics actually work better.
Which is a totally valid evidence-based instinct. I mean, we are trained from day one to minimize variables. You want the cleanest possible field and the best host.
But then on the other shoulder, you have this humanist instinct. This person sitting in front of you is suffering right now. And giving them the standard advice, go exercise and lose 50 pounds, it feels almost cruel when you're directing it at a knee that literally feels like it's full of broken glass.
It does. It feels like a trap.
Yeah.
If you operate now,
Yeah.
right away, you risk a really disastrous complication. You're looking at paraprosthetic joint infection, wound dehiscence, things that can ruin a life. But if you delay for weight loss, you might be condemning them to a year of absolute torture for metabolic result they honestly might not be able to achieve.
So that is exactly what we need to unpack today. We are breaking down the clinical decision framework for preoperative weight loss and total knee arthroplasty. We're trying to answer a pretty brutal question. When do we hold the line for optimization, and when do we finally say enough is enough and just operate?
And the answers are actually quite a bit more nuanced than the old school dogma of, come back when you're skinny. We need to look at things like the 5% rule, where bariatric surgery fits in, and those specific off-ramps where we just stop optimizing and start cutting.
Let's start with that default setting. For years, I feel like the standard operating procedure has been incredibly rigid. High BMI equals hard stop. It's just, here's a referral to a nutritionist. I'll see you in 6 months.
That has been the dogma, definitely. And we need to be fair to the surgeons. It comes from a place of biological reality. Adipose tissue isn't just dead weight sitting on a frame. It is a highly metabolically active endocrine organ,
Right, it's pumping out.
pumping out pro-inflammatory cytokines, things like IL-6, TNF-alpha. So when you cut into a patient with significant obesity, you are operating in a systemic pro-inflammatory environment from the second you make the incision.
So the body is already primed for trouble. It's already angry.
Exactly. The vascularity in that tissue is different, the immune response is blunted, the risk of wound healing issues, deep infection, and ultimately implant failure goes up almost linearly with BMI. So the surgeon isn't trying to be a gatekeeper. They are legitimately terrified of an infection that could end up costing the patient their leg.
And the logic holds up. I mean, you wouldn't do an elective case on someone with an uncontrolled A1C or active heart failure. You would fix the substrate first. You treat obesity the same way.
In theory, yes. Obesity should be treated just like diabetes or hypertension as a modifiable risk factor. But the twist here is the execution. Telling a patient to fix their A1C with insulin is one thing. That's a pharmacological lever we can just pull.
Right.
But telling a patient with mobility-limiting osteoarthritis to lose 10 or 15% of their body weight, the failure rate on that is astronomical.
Because we're asking them to burn calories they literally cannot physically burn. We're telling them to run a deficit while their engine, their basic ability to move, is completely broken.
Correct. And rigid adherence to that optimization dogma creates a massive barrier to care. You end up with these patients in this sort of clinical purgatory. They aren't getting the surgery, but they also aren't getting healthier. They're just getting older, stiffer, and more deconditioned.
So let's look at the actual framework to solve this. It
Yeah.
seems to pivot around a very specific number. We aren't asking for a miracle transformation. We are looking for 5%.
Right, the 5% rule. The consensus emerging in the field is that a weight reduction of at least 5% of total body weight is the threshold where we actually start to see a tangible return on investment.
Why 5, though? I mean, why not 10 or 20? 5% feels almost, well, negligible.
Yeah.
If I'm at 250 pounds, that's what, 12 and a half pounds? Is that really changing my surgical risk profile that drastically?
It is surprising, isn't it?
Yes.
We tend to think we need this massive Biggest Loser style transformation, but statistically, yes. We have moderate confidence that hitting that 5% mark correlates with fewer postoperative complications.
Just that little bit.
Just that bit. It seems to be enough to cool down that systemic inflammatory response, just enough to matter for wound healing. And it also correlates with modest improvements in functional scores post-op.
Okay, so 5% is the target. What is the timeline? Because I assume we aren't giving them 5 years to do this while their knee is grinding into dust.
The window is usually defined as within 1 year prior to the scheduled surgery. That seems to be the sweet spot for keeping momentum without undue delay. But I want to be very, very clear about the method here. It can't just be passing advice. It needs to be a structured weight loss program.
Structured meaning dietitian support, caloric restriction protocols, regular weigh-ins, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Just telling a patient, hey, lose some weight, has a success rate of practically 0 in this population. Has to be a formal intervention. You need a team.
Yeah.
If you were just writing lose weight in the discharge summary and sending them out the door, you aren't treating the obesity. You're just ignoring it.
Now, here is where I want to push back a bit. We talk a lot about risk reduction infection, wound healing, all the surgeon's concerns. But what about the patient's primary complaint? Pain. Does losing that 5% actually help their knee pain?
This is a crucial nuance, and it gets missed in clinic all the time. The honest answer is usually no. Not significantly.
Really, because I feel like lose weight and your knees will feel better is something doctors say in their sleep. It's printed on every orthopedic pamphlet in the country.
It is a super common refrain.
Yeah.
And to be fair, for early arthritis, it is true. Decreasing the mechanical load helps. But for advanced osteoarthritis, we are talking the kind that actually warrants a replacement, bone-on-bone, severe deformity. The mechanical damage is already done. The cartilage is gone.
So the shock absorber is missing regardless of what you weigh.
Precisely. The data shows that while preoperative weight loss reduces those surgical complications we talked about, it offers only really modest pain relief compared to the joint replacement itself.
Man, that is a massive managing expectations issue.
Huge. Think about the psychology of the patient. If you sell the weight loss protocol by promising pain relief, lose this weight and your knee will feel great, you are setting them up for massive failure and distrust.
Yeah, they lose the 15 pounds, they're starving, they're miserable, and their knee still hurts like hell.
And now they don't trust you.
So you have to be completely honest about the why.
You have to sell it on safety. You say, we are doing this to keep you from getting a deep joint infection. We are doing this so your wound actually heals. Not, we are doing this so your knee stops hurting. The surgery fixes the pain. The diet fixes the risk.
That's a great way to frame it. Okay, so we have a target 5% 1 year. But obesity isn't a monolith. A BMI of 33 is a very different physiological beast than a BMI of 55. Does this protocol distinguish between those extremes?
It has to. If we treat every overweight patient exactly the same, we fail most of them. The clinical framework creates a very clear bifurcation when we hit class 3 obesity, so that is a BMI of 40 or higher.
This is sort of the danger zone.
It is. For patients with a BMI over 40, the standard diet and exercise conversation is often clinically futile. The metabolic drive to maintain that high weight is just too strong. The hormonal signaling is fighting the patient every single step of the way.
So what do we do?
For this specific demographic, the recommendation escalates. We have to start talking about bariatric surgery.
That feels like a really heavy conversation to drop on someone. I know you came in today for a knee replacement, but I actually want to send you for a sleeve gastrectomy first. You're proposing a major abdominal surgery just to get them to the other major surgery.
It sounds radical, and yes, patients often balk at it initially, but it's actually the conservative play when you look at overall risk. Weight loss achieved through bariatric surgery reduces orthopedic complications much more effectively than non-surgical weight loss for this specific high BMI group.
Because it actually resets the metabolism.
Exactly. It fixes the metabolic syndrome in a way that just restricting calories often can't.
So for a BMI over 40, the ideal path is bariatrics first, knee second.
Strongly considered, yes. It maximizes the safety profile. And look, we have to remember, it's not just about the knee. If you have a BMI of 45, you likely have other metabolic issues going on, hypertension, severe sleep apnea, insulin resistance. Bariatric surgery addresses the whole machine, not just the hinge.
What about the patient who already did that? They walk into your clinic, they had a gastric bypass 3 years ago, they lost 100 pounds, kept it off, and now their knee is shot. Are they still considered high risk because of their history?
Actually, no. Those are our major success stories. If a patient has documented weight loss from previous bariatric surgery, they are a green light. We anticipate much better outcomes for them. They've done the hard work, their inflammatory markers are down, their albumin is likely optimized, they're ready for the OR.
And for the flip side of that severity scale, class 1 obesity, say a BMI of 32, 33, the standard dad bod or mom bod territory.
For them, weight loss is encouraged. Obviously, it's always good for general health, but it absolutely shouldn't be a gatekeeper. If they can lose a few pounds before surgery, great. If not, do not hold up the OR.
So you just proceed.
You proceed. The risk of surgery at a BMI of 32 is simply not high enough to justify delaying care for months on end. The juice just isn't worth the squeeze there.
I want to pivot to what I think is probably the most important part of this whole discussion, the off-ramps. Because we can design the perfect protocol on paper, but life is messy. Patients are messy. When do we abandon the optimization plan?
This is exactly where clinical judgment has to trump the flowchart. We cannot trap patients in a loop of failure. The most obvious go signal to proceed to surgery is simply failure to hit the target.
So they try for a year, they enroll in the structured program, they eat the kale, they track the macros, and they only lose 2%.
Then you operate.
You don't tell them to try harder for another 6 months.
No, because there are diminishing returns.
Yeah.
If a patient has legitimately engaged in a structured effort for a full year and hasn't hit that 5% mark, extending the delay rarely leads to sudden success. It usually just leads to further progression of the osteoarthritis, more muscle atrophy, and further deconditioning.
You've basically reached the limit of what conservative management can physically do.
Precisely. At that point, the curves cross. The risk of waiting becomes higher than the risk of operating. You're risking cardiovascular decline from them being entirely immobile. You're risking severe depression.
And I assume the patient's immediate suffering plays a huge role here. We can't just ignore the symptom burden while we wait for a scale to budge.
Absolutely. High symptom burden is a completely valid reason to override the weight loss requirement. If a patient is unable to work, unable to sleep, or they require high-dose opioids just to manage their daily life, the risk of delaying surgery far outweighs the benefit of potential weight loss.
You're balancing a hypothetical future risk and infection rate of maybe 3% versus 1% against a guaranteed present harm, which is agony.
That is the exact equation. And urgency is the ultimate trump card. If there is a fracture, rapidly progressive deformity, or severe bone loss that threatens your ability to even put an implant in later, the weight loss protocol goes straight out the window. You treat the acute problem.
Right. If the bone is actively collapsing, you don't check the scale.
Correct. You fix the bone.
What about the patients who literally can't participate in a program? Maybe they have severe cardiovascular limits that prevent any exercise. Or they live in a food desert with zero access to fresh nutritional support. Or maybe they just don't have the cognitive capacity or social support to manage a complex diet plan.
That is a reality we see very often, especially in certain demographics. Inability to participate, whether that's for medical or social reasons, is a definite go signal. You do not punish the patient for their circumstances.
So what's the play there?
In those cases, you shift your focus entirely. You say, okay, the weight isn't going to change. That's a fixed variable, so let's make sure absolutely everything else is perfect.
Control the controllables.
Exactly. Optimize the heart, perfect their glucose control, ensure they are absolutely strictly non-smoking, scrub them down with chlorhexidine twice as much pre-op. You mitigate risk in every other possible silo because you recognize you can't fix the weight silo.
This leads us right into some of the pitfalls we see. You mentioned gatekeeping earlier. It feels like there's a very fine line between optimization and just, well, cherry-picking the easy patients.
It is the biggest ethical trap in modern orthopedics. There is a massive temptation to use BMI as a hard wall. I don't touch knees over 35, or I don't operate over 40. That is not evidence-based medicine. That is risk aversion disguised as a protocol.
Right, it's protecting the surgeon's complication stats, not necessarily protecting the patient.
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
Using failure to lose weight as a standalone reason to indefinitely deny someone surgery is patient abandonment. The goal of preoperative protocols is to optimize the patient for surgery, not to obstruct them from ever getting it.
There's another fallacy that comes up a lot, the readmission fallacy. I hear this from hospital administrators all the time. We need to mandate weight loss to stop our readmissions from hurting our metrics.
Which sounds incredibly logical on the surface, but the evidence for it is really shaky. The data shows that weight loss reduces complications like superficial infections, delayed wound healing, but it doesn't consistently drive down overall hospital readmission rates.
Why the disconnect there? If complications go down, shouldn't readmissions go down?
Because readmissions are incredibly complex. They happen because of post-op falls, medication mismanagement, DVTs, delirium, social issues at home where there's no caregiver. Weight is just one single variable among 100.
Ah, I see.
So if you are demanding weight loss solely to gain your readmission numbers, you are standing on very thin ice.
Hmm.
You might get a patient who is 10 pounds lighter, but if they fall at home because their quads are weak, they're still coming back to the ER.
Let's try to synthesize all of this. If I'm a clinician listening to this right now and I have that patient with the BMI of 42 coming into my clinic tomorrow morning, I need a reliable decision matrix. What are the core variables I need to evaluate?
You really need to triangulate three things: severity, method, and urgency.
Walk me through them.
First, severity. Is this class 3 obesity, BMI over 40? If yes, your antenna should immediately go up for bariatric referral. That is the heavy artillery. You need to have that conversation, even if it's uncomfortable for both of you.
Okay, second.
Method. If you are delaying surgery for weight loss, is it through a structured program? Don't just rely on giving them advice. If you don't have a structured program or dietitian to refer them to, you really shouldn't be demanding the weight loss. And remember, bariatric surgery has the edge for risk reduction in that high BMI group.
And the third one, urgency.
This is your veto power. Does the patient's pain, functional collapse, or bone quality demand immediate action? If yes, urgency trumps optimization. You operate and you just manage the heightened risk perioperatively.
It seems like the overarching theme here is what we might call conditional confidence.
That is a perfect way to put it. We have moderate confidence that 5% helps. We know biologically it makes the surgery safer. But the science isn't perfect. We don't know the exact optimal duration of the diet. We don't know if rapid weight loss is better or worse than slow weight loss. So the safest approach isn't rigidity, it's flexibility.
Flexibility meaning what? Adjusting on the fly?
Meaning you recommend the weight loss. You facilitate the program. Be the coach, but be totally ready to adjust. If the biology fights back, or if the patient is mentally or physically breaking down from the pain, change the plan. Don't cling to your protocol at the expense of the person in front of you.
It's funny, we spend so much time in orthopedics measuring angles and calculating mechanical axes. We want everything to be perfect geometry. But this whole conversation really reminds me that we are treating a systemic, complex biological organism, not just a door hinge.
You can't just be a carpenter anymore. You are managing a chronic metabolic disease, obesity, concurrently with a degenerative joint disease. And sometimes you just have to admit that the metabolic disease is beyond your control in the short term, but the joint disease is completely fixable today.
And frankly, sometimes fixing that joint is the exact thing that allows them to eventually fix the metabolic disease.
That's the ultimate hope. You restore their mobility and maybe, just maybe, you give them the physical tool they need to manage their weight down the line. But you can't bank on that pre-op. It's a bonus.
So if we had to boil this entire complex discussion down to a single sentence, something you could literally stick on the monitor in the clinic so you see it before you walk into room 3, what is it?
I would write this. Aim for 5% preoperative weight loss in elective cases to reduce complications, but escalate to bariatric surgery for a BMI over 40, and never delay for urgent cases or those with high symptom burden.
That covers the target, the escalation, and the exception.
Beautiful. It perfectly balances the cold hard data with the reality of the patient sitting right in front of you. It gives you a clear plan, but it leaves the door wide open for clinical judgment.
And that brings us to the final thought I really want to leave everyone with today. It is incredibly easy to get tunnel vision on the BMI chart. It's a clean, simple number in a really messy world.
But we always have to ask ourselves, are we treating the number on the scale, or are we treating the human being in the room?
Because the goal is optimization.
The goal is optimization, never obstruction.
A powerful place to leave it. Let's get back to work.